What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel, and I hope you'll consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how the way in which the story in Showtime's Yellowjackets is unfolding and why it's changed my attitude about the show as a whole. Now, first and foremost, let me go ahead and issue a spoiler alert for those of you all who maybe haven't seen Yellowjackets yet. If you don't want to know what happens in the show, you should probably stop and close this video right now. And now that we've got that out of the way, no more wasting time, let's get into it. So for those of you all who have seen the show, you know that the cold open of the pilot episode consists of an unidentified young woman running through the snowy Canadian wilderness in nothing but a t-shirt. That young woman eventually triggers what's known as a punji trap, falling into the hole, onto the spikes, and dying as a result. A few seconds later, we see another young woman who, having watched the first 2 seasons of the show at this point, I assume is Van because of the t-shirt she's wearing. But we see her dressed in furs standing over the trap with a homemade mask on her face. Now, what's important to note about this scene is that it's not the beginning of the story. Now, why is that a point of emphasis? Because as a writer, when you start the telling of your story at a point that's not the beginning, you're essentially telling the audience that this is a plot point that holds some sort of significance to the telling of that story. And by extension, whether you choose to accept it or not, you are promising further context for that particular plot point. But the pilot episode of Yellowjackets comes to an end without telling us who the girl is in the opening scene. And what's worse is, the writers lean into that scene later in the pilot by showing us the same girl being strung up, naked, and bled out, which just makes us all want to know who she is even more. And then, again, at the end of the pilot, when we see the rest of the girls are essentially eating what's left of her, which was likely purposely included to make us as the viewers tune in every single week until the season ends to find out which one of the girls was killed and eaten by her friends and why. But because the story vacillates between the past and the present, we get a chance to see some of the women living their lives in the present. And this makes us want to know exactly who survived the wilderness and how they may have been impacted by the experience. The show does manage to answer some of those questions, but in more of a slow burn type of style, which I believe is also designed to keep us watching the show. And though we do find out in episode 5 the answer to the most significant question in season 1, being what happened to Jackie, that reveal was more of a screenwriter's sleight of hand because you kind of think that Jackie may be the girl who dies in the cold open of the pilot episode, but eventually we find out later in the season that Jackie is in fact not the girl in the cold open, and that instead Jackie froze to death while sleeping outside the cabin after a fight with her best friend Shauna in the season finale. So even in the final episodes of the season, the questions remained: who survived the wilderness, other than the 4 women we watch in the present throughout season 1? And who was the girl who was killed in the show's cold open? Now, as a writer, the way you start your story, along with your premise, puts certain questions in the minds of your viewers. Questions that in large part keep the viewer engaged. But the viewers expect answers to those questions by the time your story resolves in most cases. And in TV shows, that can be a bit of a trick, because a TV show can go on for years, with sometimes a year or more between seasons. So resolutions to questions posed to an audience are usually best delivered on a seasonal basis. Now, there's no hard and fast rule about this sort of thing, but failure to resolve the things you can by season's end makes for an extremely frustrated viewing experience. Now, the premise of this show, as explained on IMDb, is a wildly talented high school girls soccer team becomes the unlucky survivors of a plane crash in the deep Canadian wilderness. So when the show starts, we can safely assume that the girl running through the woods is one of the girls from the team. But because the story starts in the middle and then jumps back and forth between a few days before the plane crash, or 1996 just to be clear, and 2021, which in the pilot and all of season 1 by extension is considered the present, we get introduced to all the girls on the soccer team as we watch them win a New Jersey State championship, as well as their coaches and the head coach's sons, who also go on the trip with the girls to nationals. Now, because of the time jumps, we also know that Shauna, Misty, Natalie, and Thaisa, and Travis all survived the crash and the wilderness. So now, the essential question, the one that keeps us watching, is, again, other than who the girl was that was killed in the cold open, is who dies in the wilderness, how, and why? But the writers decided to play the long game here, a decision that could prove to be a mistake depending on just how long this show runs. Because typically, a show's viewership tends to go down from season to season, sometimes because of things just like this. And this show is no different. And though we do get to see Coach Bill, Rachel, Laura Lee, and ultimately Jackie all perish in season 1, either in the crash or later in the woods waiting to be rescued, the fact that season 1 of the show ends without providing a complete list of survivors, or at least an answer to the very first question it posed to us, is a screenwriting sin that I myself almost stopped watching the show in its entirety over. But I convinced myself to come back for season 2 to find out that both Van and Lottie are also still alive. But other than that, I was greatly disappointed to get to the end of season 2 only to realize that the same issue persists. Only at this point, I've now given the show 2 years of my time and attention. I would have personally rather had the seasons of this show be a few episodes longer so that it would have the chance to tie up all of its loose ends before coming to a conclusion. But what do you guys think? Am I being too hard on the writers here? Or were you left just as frustrated as I was when season 1 and season 2 finales cut to black with so many unanswered questions? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you all who might be new to the channel, be sure to like and subscribe. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. Also, be sure to go check out themadscreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.